With the iPhone 13 launch, they announced a new feature that you may have seen my tweets, but really, really ticked me off because Apple has what I call hyperbolic marketing, in that they over-exaggerate every single thing about their marketing points to the point that it's just factually untrue. And that is the case with this new feature, the cinematic mode. So the iPhone 13 has a new feature called cinematic mode, which allows you to do crazy stuff like have a fake shallow depth of field look where you blur out the background to actually track different subjects and change the depth of field after the fact to track, the different subjects and change the depth of field after the fact. Things like that. But it's not good. And the issue here, so first and foremost, this is just a gimmicky feature in the first place. If you're making cinematic video, you don't need a shallow depth of field. You don't need that. That's not a requirement for cinematic video. Cinematic video is about the motivations of what you're shooting, the composition, the lighting, the intent, the subject, the story you're telling, not the fancy gimmicks, the lens flares, or the shallow depth of field, or the slow motion, or any of that. None of that makes something cinematic. If you're making a video, if you're showing yourself pouring coffee in slow motion, it's not more cinematic than you just pouring coffee, because on a basis, no one has a reason to care about why you're pouring coffee. So Jonathan Morrison shot a music video here using the new cinematic mode feature. Now, on the surface, it looks okay, but there are some really distracting artifacts around the borders. I don't know why this vertical segment's even in here, but around the borders, there's all sorts of feathering stuff. Her hand gets out of focus half the time. It's super distracting and takes away from the video. So previously, now granted, his shooting is awesome here. So I wanna make this clear. His shooting is pretty cool. He is walking backwards holding the phone for all of this. He is keeping it stable. He is doing the backwards walk fine without falling on his butt. I would have fallen and broken my neck 5 times here. He is a pro. But that is what makes this cinematic. This whole, the lighting, the set, the fact that they're shooting this is a big walking take, where their location is, the golden hour, that lighting that they're shooting that in, all of this kind of makes something more cinematic, because those are the intent. Those are what movies focus on, controlling what you see. The distracting feature just takes away from it. So had he not used this feature, now the point of shooting this video was to demonstrate the feature, so keep that in mind. But had he not used this feature, it would have just been a music video shot on a phone, which would have been fine. It would have been cinematic enough because it's a music video and because it was shot with that intent. It would have just been a music video shot on a phone and been fine. With this feature, it is a music video that is embarrassed to be a shot on a phone and trying to hide the fact that it was. And I think it's super distracting. Now, is this fine for social media videos and things like that? Yeah, probably. I think it's pointless. I think you're going to distract more people than actually you benefit by using a feature like this, because you don't need it. But the problem is they didn't advertise it as this big new social media feature. They advertised it as cinematic mode, which, keep in mind, the cinematic mode only shoots in 30 FPS, and it looks like motion interpolated. If we look at some of these clips, it doesn't even look like 30 FPS. It almost looks like it's slowed down from 60 FPS, or either shot at 24 and frame optical flowed up to 30 FPS or something. It looks wrong. And I'm a 30 FPS ride or die guy, and I'm sitting here how can it be a cinematic mode and not have 24 FPS? Because that is one of all the technical details that makes something cinematic. 24 frames per second is one of the top requirements for that. My problem here is not that they made a goofy feature that you have it as an option. It's a cool feature that you have as an option available to you. I don't have any direct negative issue with that. My problem is they announced it as this pro video feature for cinematographers with the specific quote of saying, "We are changing the language of cinema." If they are changing the language of cinema by not even having 24 FPS for something that's cinematic, and by putting gimmicky, fake, distracting, shallow depth of field looks as being cinematic, if that's changing the language of cinema, it's doing so in a way that is harmful to the language of cinema. It's going against what the language has meant for the entire history of cinema. So it's not a good thing. I seriously hope this doesn't change anyone's language. And I'm so tired already of there being so many hashtag filmmakers on YouTube obsessing over this cinematic thing teaching people to obsess over slow-mo or shallow depth of field of all this stuff. And then I just have to imagine so many of these people go try to get jobs in the film industry, and they can't because they don't actually know a thing about shooting cinematic videos. I don't know. It just drives me nuts. All of this is tools that are available to you, but tools that are not required to make something cinematic. And there's nothing wrong with having more tools. And if I had an iPhone 13, I would play around with this feature for fun myself. But to then pose it as a professional user's work tool that is changing the language of cinema, that's what makes me mad. Apple's marketing is hyperbolic and potentially harmful towards, like, as an educator. I'm coming this from the perspective of an educator who then sees a bunch of kids be misled on what half of this stuff means. And this happens with streaming stuff all the time. And then I have to try to work to undo that. But I'm going up against Apple for that, which is like, how am I supposed to do that? So really frustrating, but just wanted to share my thoughts there. Again, none of this is the takeaway from Jonathan's shooting or the video he produced, because again, this was just a demo and his ninja walking is absolutely stellar. Just the feature itself.